What it do, y'all? We are here for episode 8 of The Valley. This one, a lot of annoyances. But if you're new here, hit subscribe, thumbs up the video, turn the post notifications on because I'm going to be dropping these Wednesdays as Love Island is in duration. So y'all going to see me on Wednesdays instead of Tuesday nights. But yeah, thumbs up the video, be in the comments down below, share the video, and let's go because I'm trying to get this done before Love Island. It's 7 o'clock. Let's go. All right, so we get back, essentially, they start off with, like, stupid filler scenes at the beginning, but we get Scheana and Brock's house, which I'm so sick of seeing these Vanderpump rules that want to get on here. But they're at their house, and they're having, like, this little get-together and whatever, and Brittany, Janet, and Jason, they are over there, and Janet's in the kitchen talking to Brittany about how Jax had texted her asking, like, how y'all doing and whatever, and she's like, she pretty much told him, like, we're doing good, like, I'm proud that you're actually still in the treatment center. And Brittany ends up saying like she wanted him to be in there and actually fight for her a little bit too. And she thought that rehab would actually help. But as we all know, Jax is still Jax. But she ends up saying like him signing the lease without talking to her about it, knowing that she still has 2 months left on her rental house. He pretty much fucked her over. And now she's got to move. She's got to find a way to move on because she knows that she deserves better than Jax. It's like, yeah, we know that you should have known that and has known that for as long as you've been with him, but we don't know for sure if you're going to truly do that. We know now that she's dating some dude now, but how long is that really going to last? Are you going to go back to Jax? That's going to be the real question. But they move out to the pool where Sheena's out there, Brock's out there, and they start talking about something that had happened off camera with Zack. And Janet ends up saying at Brittany's party, Scheana was talking to Zack and mentioned Jared, who I'm like, who is Jared? Y'all tell me if I'm tripping, but I don't know who Jared is. But Zack had apparently said some horrible things that she can't even state, which we later find out that he said that he told Jared to fuck off or whatever. I'm like, you couldn't say that. But Brittany ends up saying like she thinks that that Zack ends up thinking that Brittany never chooses his side. She always chooses everybody else's side but his, which, I mean, the track record shows that you do, but she ends up saying, like, I'm not choosing his side. I'm not choosing anybody's side. And he ended up texting her saying that she's a bad friend or whatever. I do think that she is. Honestly, I do. But Zack, he's with Kristen and Luke at their house. And he's pretty much telling them that, like I just said, that he told Jared to go fuck off. Like, is that really the most horrible thing that you can say to somebody? But he ends up saying that Brittany had came out aggressively, pretty much saying, like, what did you say? What did you say? And he's like, I didn't say anything crazy, and I wasn't out here, like, threatening anybody, so you shouldn't be coming out here like that. But Kristen ends up saying, like, if she would have came out doing that shit to her, too, it would have triggered her, too, because, A, you're my friend, and you're coming to me pretty much asking me, like, what did you do? What did you do? And she's pretty much stating, like, you're acting like I'm the one causing all of these things instead of asking the people that actually are doing this to me. And it's just like, I mean, I get both sides. I can get coming out and asking, like, what's going on. But the way they're making it seem, it's like she's putting the blame on Zack. Which, I mean, Zack's track record doesn't help, but I see where they're coming from, too, though. But he ends up saying sometimes he feels like Brittany just does not hear him out. And Kristen says, yeah, because she kind of don't give a fuck. Like, that's just really what it is. And Kristen seems to relate, which we later on find out she does. But Zack ends up saying that he feels like he just doesn't have the same Brittany that he had. Like, when he moved out there in 2015, they were super close. And he just don't feel like he still has that same connection that he did with her before. But they all agree that it's a good idea for them to have a conversation. But back at Sheena's, Janet's now in the kitchen with Scheana, Brittany, and Jason. And she's asking the vent about what happened the night before. So she then starts talking about how Kristen had mentioned that she had heard from Jasmine that Jason was out here going to bars taking his ring off. And Janet ends up saying, like, if it's a husband in this group that's out here trying to cheat and failing, it's not mine. Basically trying to take a shot at Danny yet again. She's obsessed. But Janet, which I believe, like I said, I believe that what is being said about Jason, I believe is true. I do. Because the person that's always throwing rocks lives in a glass house, and that's Janet. But she ends up saying that. But Janet then says, too, that Kristen is doing this stuff to distract from Danny actually going to bars being shady. Can two things not be true? Because if that's true, who's to say yours isn't true either? But we'll see later on. But Scheana ends up telling them that Jasmine was invited to come to this party that they're at right now, but she didn't come because of Janet. Jason ends up saying, like, Jasmine made up everything and told it to Kristen to get back at Janet, and now she's scrambling because Kristen brought it up. No, you're scrambling. You and Janet are the ones that are scrambling because y'all are trying to figure out a way to get the heat off of this, because you probably know low key it's true. Like, they just giving off guilty vibes to me. But Janet ends up saying they both, talking about Kristen and Jasmine, both know Jason's character, so she don't know why they're doing this. But Jason ends up saying the more he thinks about it and the more he thought about it, he got even more upset, because it's true. I'm trying to protect myself, but allegedly, but shit, it gives off that it's true. But Janet ends up saying that they were laughing it off for her mom, and her mom ended up getting upset about hearing it. And then whenever she saw that, she started to think, oh, maybe this is fucked up. And she started feeling like she's upset too. But they all agree that it's bullshit. And if Jasmine can't apologize, they won't be able to move on. So what's the difference between this and you doing what you're doing with Danny and Nia? That's why I don't feel bad for either one of them. I don't. I don't. Yeah, it's not good to be sitting here spreading rumors about your friends, but when it comes to Janet and then Jason, you're associated because you tie yourself to this bullshit. I don't have any sympathy for them because she does the same shit. She does the same shit. But Janet is sitting in there feeling like she tough guy, talking about Kristen when has Kristen Doute ever apologized for anything in her life? She actually has. She has. Whether it was true or not, she at least apologized. She ends up saying, you just put a target on your back, bitch, coming from my husband. I said, okay. Keep trying it, because we already know how it goes down with you and Kristen. Kristen will win at the end of the day. But we get this beach scene where everybody essentially is there except for Danny, Nia, Zack, and Jesse. So Brittany's there and she's asking Janet if she's talked to Jasmine, and Janet's like, no. But Brittany ends up saying that she had told Jasmine about them wanting apologies from her, and Jasmine's like, I'm not doing it. I don't blame Jasmine. I wouldn't apologize either, because get the fuck out of my face. But Brittany ends up saying she just doesn't understand why people have issues with this. This is why I don't like Brittany. She's a narcissist. She is just as bad as Jax, and that's probably why they're together. They both are narcissists. She says she don't understand why people have issues with Janet because she's always been there for me. I've never seen her to have drama with me, and she's sitting there acting like Janet. Just because Janet's good to you does not mean she's good to everybody, and we see that she's not good to everybody. She's one of those people that, oh, it didn't happen to me, so it probably didn't happen. Janet is literally, you literally watched all last season and think that Janet doesn't start shit. And the drama doesn't just, she acts like Janet is just invincible and drama just comes to her for no reason. She literally starts the shit. But Janet ends up saying that someone who takes something that she doesn't know to be true, talking about Jasmine, takes something that she doesn't know to be true, brings it to somebody who was currently not cool with, that's not friend behavior. Don't like Janet, but I do agree. Both parties are wrong. If you want to keep it real, Janet got a point, but I don't feel bad for Janet. So fuck her. But Kristen and Luke and Jasmine, they all arrived now at this point. And Brittany's sitting there being fake, waving and stuff like she wasn't just over here talking shit. But Kristen ends up saying that her and Jasmine are both over Janet, as am I. And Kristen also then says Janet found out about the rumor at the party and was cool with it. But she's heard, what did I say? No, she said that she had heard the rumor because she told her about the rumor at the party. But then she ends up stating that she heard it from Jasmine. What did I write, y'all? I'm so confused. I said Janet was, I don't know what I wrote. But she heard out from Sheena at the party that Janet was talking shit, which we all know she was. But Kristen ends up saying, if she don't stop talking shit about Danny and Nia, I'm going to keep staying on her head. Exactly. It's tit for tat. You can't do one thing and then expect somebody else to not do it to you. But Jasmine ends up saying that Janet can shove that apology up her ass because she ain't getting it from me. I don't blame you. I wouldn't do it either. And she's pretty much stating too, I ain't started. I ain't bring it up to you. So what am I apologizing for? But the desperate wannabe I was going to say housemates, but the wannabe cast members, Lala, Sheena, and Brock, they arrive. But they start talking about how Brittany has this date that she's going on later. And she's like, that's why I'm dressed up nice. She's wearing this dress. It's like a beach dress. I'm like, is that something that's nice or whatever? I don't know if it's a date, but it sounds like she either kicking back with some dude or whatever. But regardless, they start talking about that. They're having these little group conversations, excluding Kristen and Jasmine. Kristen and Jasmine over there talking to each other and having their own little conversation. But Janet's sitting there making these little passive-aggressive comments talking about the ring and stuff, and Jason not having his ring on and just joking about it. You can tell she's trying to get a rise out of Jasmine and Kristen. And it's just like, you doing stuff like that, and then whenever shit happens and blows up in your face, you try to act like you did nothing wrong. That's why later on I'm about to get on her. But Jasmine and Kristen, they get up to go talk shit after she did that. And the other group sitting around playing truth or dare, like sex jokes and stuff like that. But Jasmine's over there saying like she wants to get some shit off her chest, but it's a time and a place to do it. But Kristen and Jasmine, like I said, they're having their own little separate conversation now. When they're sitting back down, it's later on in the day. Jason is sitting there talking to Janet about, what do you think we should do? Should we go over here and talk to her now? Janet is pretty much stating like, I just don't know how I feel about going and talking and initiating a conversation with somebody who clearly don't give a fuck about either one of us. She's so dramatic. But Jason ends up getting up to see, he's like, let's go talk to see if let's go talk to Jasmine and see if she's ready to speak. And he ends up asking Janet if she's ready. She's like, 1 minute. And then they show them sitting there for like a couple seconds, and then they finally get up. But Jason goes over and asks Jasmine to talk. They get up. Everybody's essentially like this. And Jason goes and pulls her over. Janet's there as well. He ends up saying, like, I'm confused about what's going on. Jasmine said that I had heard about the ring thing a couple years ago. Didn't care then, don't care now. Janet then tries to butt in as she's trying to explain herself. As she has the floor, she starts butting in how many years ago. Jasmine says, let me finish, Janet. Don't cut me off because this is what you do. Janet, being the passive-aggressive Karen that she is, I'm glad she said it because that's exactly what it was giving. Starts trying to walk away. Jason, come on. Because she didn't answer the question that you wanted her to answer in that moment, because she was already trying to answer a question that your damn husband, who it's about, was asking her. But you don't want to let her speak. You want to keep trying to cut her off while she's speaking. And now when she wasn't even snapping back at that moment. She eventually does. But now you want to start playing those games. She gaslighting. Like, she's a professional gaslighter. But Jasmine ends up saying, let me finish. And Janet ends up saying that Jason says no, essentially. But Janet's sitting there gaslighting Jasmine, saying, you're yelling. And Jasmine's like, yeah, I'm yelling now because you literally are trying to walk away and have him walk away when we sitting here talking. And it's just like, yeah, what do you expect? But she ends up saying, too, Jasmine says, I heard the rumor from a group of friends. Like, I'm not snitching on who it is, but I heard it from them. Jason ends up saying, so you heard it 2 years ago and just sat on it. Jasmine ends up saying, yeah, I mean, the fact that it was brought up sucks. I didn't believe it then, but I don't believe it now. But Jason ends up saying, so what do you mean by that? Janet says, so you brought it up to Kristen. Pretty much trying to put words in Jasmine's mouth. But Jasmine ends up saying, Janet, I need you to shut up right now. I said, here we go. And Janet ends up trying to get Jason to leave yet again, but she keeps gaslighting Jasmine to the point where it's like when Jasmine's saying what she's saying, it's like she didn't have to say that, but the way Janet is provoking her, I mean, you asking for it. Like, you literally are asking for it. And Jasmine tells her the truth about her. So she says she is a shitty friend, she's a vibe killer, and she gives off Karen energy, and that's exactly what she does. But Jasmine ends up screaming, we're done. She walks away. Jason and Janet, and actually Jasmine and Jason, too many J's. They start going back and forth. Jason's calling her fake and two-faced, and Jasmine has broken his heart, and he's just being dramatic too. That's why him and Janet are together. But Janet's calling Jasmine a liar, and it's just like, it's funny because y'all all are the same people, like two sides of the same coin. But Jason goes walking off dramatically. Janet goes over there and says, let's go. But Jason ends up saying it's clear that Jasmine has despised Janet for a while, and it's just making him question him and Jasmine's relationship and their friendship. So Jason then goes over to Jasmine and tells her that she's essentially the fakest person here. She talks shit about every single person there. And Jasmine says literally the truth. We all talk shit about each other. Y'all do. Like, you included. And he tries to say, well, I don't do that. I'm a normal person. What was you just doing with Danny a couple episodes ago? Like, what was you doing with him a couple episodes ago? Exactly. Talking shit about him. Like, be for real. But Jasmine ends up saying that. Jason ends up saying that he and Janet haven't done anything to Jasmine. And Janet and Jason, they go storming off. Kristen ends up telling the group, Jasmine did not tell me that. Like, she didn't. And Zack ends up proving it later on as well. But Jasmine ends up saying, I just don't do shit like that. But she ends up saying that she loves Jason. And, like, they have a good bond or whatever with them both being the only two black people on the show and in the group. And she ends up saying, like, her and Janet have other shit to talk about, but she can't even talk to Janet because Janet always want to run away, which is the truth. Janet is the type of friend that you cannot have because Janet thinks she's always right. And you can't even have a conversation where you can even address anything that she's doing wrong without her wanting to get up and leave. That's like Portia Williams from The Housewives. Like, I've been watching this season, and anytime somebody tries to bring anything up that she does, she tries to get up and walk away to prevent you from even being able to have a conversation to move forward. You can't move forward unless you have a conversation about the shit. And that's exactly what Janet do. Janet get up and leave too whenever she knows the heat is on her and she can't find a way to get it off. But Jasmine starts getting emotional, and I find it kind of funny how she is getting emotional. And I'm like, if anybody else would have gotten emotional, they ought to have been up hugging her. And I just find that funny, especially with her being the only black girl on the show. But Kristen, Zack, Nia, and Brittany, the next day they go and get brunch. They're sitting down talking about how Nia and Zack had a good time with Danny and Jesse. They were at the bar playing like cornhole games. Kristen said, I wish I was there. We know you do. But Kristen ends up asking Brittany about how her little date thing was with the dude. And she ends up saying that she enjoyed it. He's a dad. He has a real job. And they met when she was hosting at Jax's, which they call Brittany's, doing a bachelorette party that she was hosting or whatever. And I'm like, I wonder if it's that nigga that she over here dealing with. But Nia, she ends up asking about how the beach was. And Brittany says that she enjoyed it, but she knows Kristen didn't. But Kristen ends up saying that her, Luke, and Jasmine did not enjoy it, and they wish that they was with Nia and them. But Zack ends up saying it's kind of comical how Janet and Jason kind of laughed it off at the party, but now they're making it a huge deal, saying that Jasmine was the one that made up the story when it's not true. I heard it from other people separately. I said exactly. But Nia ends up saying, what I completely agree with, Janet is just trying to stir the pot. Like, that's just literally what it is. That's how Janet operates. And then she throws the rock, hides her hands. She want to act like she ain't doing it, but she the most messy one out of all of them. But Kristen ends up saying, like, why shut it down? And then when it's over, you then want to bring it back up. And then when you bring it back up, it looks weird. It does look weird now. It makes you question shit now. But Zack ends up segueing the conversation into how he feels about Brittany downplaying anything that Jax or Janet does that's crazy, because she does. She does. He's not lying. But when it comes to Zack, he don't get that same treatment. Kristen's sitting over there nodding her head because she agrees, because she says in her confessionals too, like, I feel that same way. But Brittany ends up saying that she ends up feeding the bullshit. Pretty much stating like, I mean, I'm so blessed to have so many best friends. Whenever I'm around y'all, I tell y'all their point of view. When I'm around them, I tell them y'all's point of view. I don't believe that shit. I don't believe it. But we'll move past that scene. Danny and Nia, I didn't really write too many notes down. They are out having a lymphatic massage, and they're pretty much talking about like what they're gonna do, how they're gonna have these kids before Nia has her mommy makeover, because Nia wants to look good and feel good about herself. But Janet and Jason, they're at home. She's talking about how her son can sense when she's upset, because apparently she's upset about what's going on with her and Jasmine. So she starts crying with no tears. Jason comes over and comforts her. He ends up saying like, when they were talking to Jasmine, it just looked like she just looked at you like you was scum of the earth. She is. But Janet ends up start making these victim noises because there were no tears. Like, there was no tears rolling down. So she's not crying. But she ends up saying she feels like she's been dumped out of nowhere and Jasmine is discarding their friendship. And I'm like, you always playing the victim. Like, it's always somebody else's fault but yours. But Jason ends up taking the baby to go be with Janet's mom. They're sitting down, and Jason ends up calling Jax back because it's so many J's. Do y'all realize this? Jax, Janet, Jason, Jasmine. I'm over it. I'm over it. But he ends up calling Jax back because he had missed calls from him. And Janet is sitting there as well. He ends up FaceTiming him, and she sits on the side because she don't want to be on the FaceTime camera. So she's sitting there listening to the conversation as well. But Jax gets on the phone. This is how you know Jax ain't wrapped too tight, because the way he acts here and then acts later on, crazy. Like, something ain't right with him. But he gets on here and talking to them, and it's just like, okay, he kind of had me fooled too. Talking about like his day has been rough or whatever, but overall it's been a very helpful experience. And he says he's trying to figure out where his anger stems from. Don't believe that, but that's what he says. He says like he lost it all when he had found out about Julie and Brittany, and he ended up pushing her away and didn't realize what he was doing, and said that he'd gotten away with it for so long, which is Brittany's fault. That is true, because he ended up saying too, I wish she would have just left me alone or pushed me to the side and held me accountable. And I'm like, that's the problem too. That's why I can't all the way feel bad for Brittany, because she allowed that shit to continue to happen. And when you allow shit like that to happen with somebody like Jax, it's always going to happen. You can never do that. But he ends up saying that, and he says that he's gotten away with so much for so long that he thought it was acceptable. Again, you can't let somebody like Jax do that, because what he just said is true. He will think that it is okay. But he said being there was like a wake-up call. He ends up saying like he feels like his dad put him there for a reason, because essentially that's kind of the same thing that he dealt with his dad. He says he feels like he brought him there to break the cycle. Everything that he said was so well put together. I was believing it. I'm like, okay, maybe he might be taking a turn. We'll get to it in a minute though. But Jax ends up saying like, because Jason ends up saying like, it's good that you're finally taking accountability. Him and Janet are like, wow, what are we really hearing? And are we really hearing this from Jax? But Jason ends up telling him like, the mortgage. That's what's stressing Brittany out. If you really want to start making leeway with her, you got to figure out how to pay the shit. So he ends up telling him that. Jax ends up saying like, we have this successful podcast. I don't have the funds to pay it off right now, but the manager ends up having the full amount and she can give it to Brittany. That's pretty much what he's stating. But Janet and Jason, whenever they finish, they're shocked about what they just heard from him. But we wrap it up with Brittany with her mom. She's there with the son, whose name Carter. Isn't it Carter? Cruz. Cruz. But they're sitting there and she's covering up the cameras and stuff because she's back at the house and she don't want him spying on her because you was in here covering up cameras. I'm going to do it too. So she said she's going to be in the house now, but she's also going to cover her rental too. So now she's basically paying 2 months of rent where she's not going to be at, and she got the mortgage too. But she ends up FaceTiming Jax's sister and she tells her about the mortgage and stuff and not being paid since May. And she ends up stating too that her ring, her wedding ring, and the bands are missing. Jax, that's all Jax. But a producer ends up coming in the room, telling her that she got a text from Jax. And the text says, make sure you get that on film. I can hear everything. Childish behavior. I said, what the fuck is wrong with him? I'm like, does he really have some shit set up in there where he can hear and see everything? And I'm like, how is he doing that right now? Brittany is thinking the same way I am. Like, what the fuck? Does he have some shit going on in here? Did he put a bug in here? And the producer's like, how does he even know I'm here? And it's like, yeah, how does he know that particular producer is there? And then text her while she's in there working with Brittany. I'm like, that's crazy. But Jax's sister ends up getting a call while she's mid-call with Brittany, and they hang up. She ends up calling Brittany back, like, directly after to let her know that Jax is going to the hospital because he has high blood pressure. I said, something about this just gives crazy. Like, it just makes sense. He did all that, and then now he wants the sympathy. I don't believe that he's genuinely going to the hospital because he got high blood pressure right now. I don't. I feel like he's playing a game. But Jax's sister claims that she heard them in the car driving up there. But Brittany ends up getting a call. No, I just read this. I know. But Brittany, she ends up telling her mom about it whenever she gets off the phone with Jax's sister. And she's like, I was wondering if he was just literally doing this to freak me out. But she ends up telling her, too, about this email that she had gotten from Jax. And he ends up saying that their home is in foreclosure. He's been trying to call the bank to make payments or whatever. And they told him it's in foreclosure. And after this month, he ain't paying for shit. He said everything else is on her until the house is paid. I said, this nigga ain't shit. I said, he is crazy. Brittany ends up saying, like, I've been worried the whole time that he's been in there and probably ain't learned a damn thing. And you know he hasn't. But he ends up telling her, too, that they're sharing the podcast 50-50, a.k.a. the earnings are 50-50. As he literally just, and that's what Brittany said, he literally just told Janet and Jason, I get the money for the podcast, which would have helped her try and get back up on the mortgage. And this is like, that's crazy. But Brittany's like, I ain't even done, like, he's literally not even done the podcast in 2 months. I'm the one doing all the work, and he's sitting here trying to tell me he getting 50-50. A fool. But that was the episode, y'all. Thumbs up the video. Drop a comment down below. Subscribe if you're new. I'm going to be back next Wednesday. I should have more energy. But yeah, I'll see y'all then. Peace.